Hello and welcome to this episode of Artful Loving. Thank you for being with me. In this episode, we are going to talk about communication and how to communicate like a pro. Hi, I'm Nick Tovey, relationships and intimacy counselor, coach, educator, and author of the book, The Revolutionary Man. Thanks again for being with us. If you're new to me, then you can learn a little bit more about myself and my work at my website, nicktovey.com. If you're new to the channel, then go ahead, click the subscribe button so you can be engaged in this conversation that we're having and continuing to have. Communication. Of course, everybody knows that a good relationship survives off of good communication. Of course, stands to reason, yeah? But yet, why are we all so bad at it? Why is it that communication often is the thing that trips us off? I hear so often from couples and clients that come to me talking about how bad they are at communicating. And what I find very interesting is that they communicate very well to me about how bad they are at communicating. So what's going on? The reality is, it's not that we're bad at communicating. Often people are really good at communicating. But what happens is in relationship, emotions come up. Yeah, emotion gets in the way of what we're trying to think and how it comes out of our mouth. So it's not that we're bad at communicating, it's that we have emotional mastery issues or challenges, and we find it very difficult to communicate clearly what we need to say when emotions are present. So this is really, really important to understand. Often, when we're at our most emotional, we're not very good at communicating. And often this is when we say the wrong thing, we trip over our words, or we just don't say what we really need to say. So the important thing is to know when not to communicate, to give ourselves a bit of a time out, a bit of a time to regulate our emotions, to come back into a state of equilibrium within ourselves, so we can then get the words out in a cohesive and understandable manner without it being a way in which we create more confrontation, more challenge. So to learn a little bit more about emotional mastery, or what I call emotional mastery, check out episode 9 on the channel and learn a little bit more about how to be with our emotions, how to be with each other's emotions when it comes to being in intimate relationship. Of course, like most relationship experiences, emotion really plays a big part in intimate relationship, but it plays so much more of a part in intimate relationship than any other relationship, because there's so much at stake, because our hearts are open to each other, and so therefore anything that feels a little bit like a threat to our vulnerability, i.e. our heart, then we're going to shut down, we're going to defend, we're going to try and prevent this wound or this pain from happening. This is often what gets in the way of good, clear communication in relationship, is this need to defend ourselves. So we want to be looking at developing skills and resources to help us deregulate ourselves out of a heightened state of emotion. So go check out episode 9. So one of the most simple tools we can really learn in a relationship is the timeout. Sometimes we just need to not communicate. We need to stop what it is we're trying to say. We need to stop trying to have a conversation and trying to get each other to see our perspective and our point of view, and just take a break, go and do something, go for a walk, go and take some deep breaths, so we can then come back to the relationship from a place of calm centeredness and maturity and out of a place of defense or attack, and then have a good conversation, a decent, fruitful, coherent conversation. So that is one of the primary skills we need to get in place in our relationship, is understanding when what I'm saying just isn't working. And this conversation just needs to stop. We need a timeout. So important. And of course, sometimes it's going to take one of you to be the courageous one to call it and say, we need timeout. Yeah. One of the things that gets in the way is our sense of pride and our sense of need to defend and justify our position, to be the one that's right in order to win the fight. Yeah? It doesn't work. We need to relinquish our need to be right when it comes to intimate relationship and trying to come to any level of resolution when conflict is present. But of course, we're not just talking about conflict. We're talking about just communication in general as well. So there are some really important things that we need to know and we need to have in place when it comes to being able to have good communicative experiences in a relationship. One of the really important things I think we need to bring awareness to is sharing the airwaves. Allowing each other permission to speak. Yeah, there's often one in the partnership that is more of a talker than the other, and it doesn't always have to be the woman who's more of the talker. It can often be, but it doesn't have to be that at all. There's plenty of instances where I've seen it very much the other way. So let's not genderize and generalize here, but most of the time there's one in the partnership that is more of a talker than the other. So that person, whoever that is, needs to have some awareness around that and how they need to zip it for a moment and allow the other person permission to speak. Often in those dynamics, the one who is maybe less of a talker often just doesn't bother trying to get their words into the mix, because sometimes maybe they just haven't been able to get that word in edgeways. Yeah, so sometimes the other person really needs to bring some awareness to the fact that they're stealing the airwaves and actually preventing this other person from having a moment to breathe, to speak, to provide their perspective. So this is really important. If you're the over talker, stop for a while, take a breath, ask a question, invite the other person to participate. If you're the under talker, it's going to take a little bit of effort for you to actually jump in and speak up. It may be that if you've had the experience where, like, you may have been interrupted, you may not have been invited to talk, or your point of view has been denied or undermined in some way, then that can often lead to a resistance to actually bringing your voice into the conversation. If that has been your experience, it may be that there's some healing that needs to happen between the two of you, and for you to be able to actually value your voice and to bring it through. This, of course, may need some extra support with a counsellor or therapist to bring both of you into the conversation together, so we can really highlight each other's patterns and ways of operating. It's important. I always like to think of communication being about twice as much of this as there is that. You know, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. That's the proportion in which good, solid, healthy communication takes place, is listening, really listening to what's being said. And listening is an art form in itself, and it's it's such a really, really important part of conversation, of the skill, the art of conversation, is really listening to what is wanting to be said. And sometimes it's not just the words that are being said. Sometimes it's the body language, it's the posture, the what's lying between the words, what isn't quite being said. Sometimes that's very, very informative to us, to help us understand the other person's perspective, where they're at, what they're feeling, what their experiences are. If in a good conversation, in a good communicative experience, it has to be a point of trying to understand each other. Yeah, we want that to be our primary incentive, is to understand each other. That is how we get closer. That is how we learn to live with each other, to love each other, to be in good relationship with each other, is understanding. How can we possibly hope to understand another if we don't listen to what they have to say? So sometimes we need to ask questions in order to give us something to hear. Yeah. Sometimes somebody's going to need a little extra encouragement, a little coaxing to bring their voice into the conversation. So ask a question. A really, 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 really important part of good communication is not interrupting. Not interrupting. Do not interrupt what's being said. It is the biggest killer of a conversation. If you're listening to somebody and you're pretending to listen to somebody, but you're up in your mind thinking about what your next response is, how you can rebuttal what they have to say, how you can share your experience that was so much more intense and important than their experience. If you're up here thinking about what your next comment's going to be, you're not listening. You're not hearing what's being said. And if then you can't stop yourself from bringing in your point of view, which is of course so much more important than the others, by interrupting them, that just tells them that you're just not interested. You're not interested in what they've got to say, and therefore, why would you even bother? If you're that other person being interrupted, why would you even bother speaking? There's no conversation happening here. You've just invited me to your monologue. That's not conversation. That's not good communication. A lot of us have learnt through our childhood, through early experiences in our life, to undervalue what needs to be said. Maybe we've been shut down for our perspective, for our voice hasn't been listened to. If this has been something we've learned and therefore we've taken on some beliefs and conditioning around how important our voice is, then it can be that we've got something there that is blocking our voice from coming out into the relationship, into the communication, into the conversation. So it's worth, if that's you, it's worth going and working with somebody to really tease those early beliefs and understandings and those unhealthy patterns that are blocking your communication. It's worth going and doing some work on that and trying to understand that part of you and bringing some healing to that, so you can then, of course, value what you have to say. And of course, one of the things we need to do as individuals in a relationship is teach each other how to value each other. Yeah. So it's up to me to teach my partner how I need to be valued, how I need to be heard, how I need to be understood. I can't just assume that they know that already, yeah? Because of course everyone's different. So I need to be an example to my partner of how I want to be treated. So that means valuing myself, valuing what I have to say, valuing my own boundaries and my own perspectives around what's important for me. Yeah. If I show my partner that I don't value them, why would they value my opinion, my perspective, my needs? Yeah. It's really important that we are able to exemplify our own value, our own worth to the people that we're in relationship with. It's also important to just recognize and understand and have compassion for each other's difference. Not everybody's the same. Not everybody communicates the same. Not everybody has the level of language and vocabulary when it comes to communication. And so rather than trying to force the other person to communicate in the way that you want to. Try to meet them where they're at, rather than making them wrong for being who they are and how they are. Yeah, this is a good. I mean, it's a good relational skill just in general, around really allowing other people to just be who they are, rather than us imposing our ideals and what we think's important on them. Yeah. So recognizing each other's difference, each other's particularities when it comes to vocalization, communication, those sorts of things. And of course, that doesn't mean minimizing and settling for poor communication. Yeah, we want to be able to. It is a skill that we want to be able to develop. It is important to have good communication, to have good dialogue in a relationship, and to feel like we're being met by somebody who can bring that without trying to impose too much pressure on them to be something that they're not. We can all learn, we can all grow, we can all develop. So let's do that. Let's put some intentionality and some effort into that. Another very important rule of thumb, tool, if you like, when we're talking about communication and creating healthy communication that doesn't necessarily cause more conflict. We don't want to cause harm. We don't want to cause more conflict. So it's important for us to understand how we use our words and what's behind the words that we use. What we want to avoid is weaponizing words, weaponizing our communication, using words and language and of course tone of voice to inflict harm and pain on the other, to make them feel something that prevents them from feeling safe, from feeling valued, from feeling respected. Yeah, so we want to avoid words that cause harm, i.e. naming words that tell that person you're this, you're that, you're ugly, you're fat, you're stupid, you're a liar, whatever it is. Yeah. Shaming words. Yeah, shaming words that are used to put that person down, to make them feel inferior, to make them feel less than. Words that, like gaslighting words, where we're trying to manipulate them to feel like they've mistakenly seen something or heard something, yeah, or that they're just wrong. So naming words, shaming words, and blaming words. Blaming words that it's your fault, you did this, you always do this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so you notice in my body language and all of those three, naming, shaming, blaming, there's an arrow going from me to you. So I've weaponized my words, yeah? So there is harm meant to be inflicted on you in that way. So we don't want to do that, yeah? Because what do we do if we shoot an arrow at somebody else? They're going to defend, they're going to guard, they're going to deflect the arrow, and they're going to come back with their own arrows. This is how conflict just gets out of control, because we're just firing arrows at each other. No one's listening, no one's trying to come to any level of understanding so we can resolve the conflict. We're just fighting for our need to be right and to defend. Yeah. So let's not do that. Let's not fire the arrows. Let's not weaponize our words. But we also want to be able to get our voice heard and get our point of view across and help the other person understand my situation, how I'm experiencing life right now. So what we want to use is turn the arrows around and use words that are coming from the I. So use language which is I-oriented. I feel this when you say that. I want to do this. I need this from this relationship. Rather than you, which is all blaming and making the other person responsible, turn it around and speak from the I. A really beautiful tool and very, very useful, very widely used is nonviolent communication, NVC. This is a very simple formula that helps us really speak what needs to be spoken, but in a way that doesn't cause harm and doesn't escalate confrontation. And there's 3 parts to this formula. The first part is naming our feeling. I feel upset about what you did. So I'm naming how I feel. I'm defining the behavior that maybe triggered the feeling, and I'm then stating a preference. So I feel disrespected when you speak to me that. Yeah, so I'm naming my feeling, I'm naming the behavior that caused the feeling, and then I'm going to add to it, I'd prefer if you spoke to me this way. Yeah. So the 3 parts: naming the feeling, defining the behavior, and stating a preference. Really important. Very, very simple. And if I'm speaking from my own perspective, nobody else can really argue with that. Yeah, I'm not making them responsible, and this is a really important thing. When I say I feel this because you did that, we're not saying that they made me feel this. Yeah, this is really important because we feel things in response to stimuli outside of us. It's not necessarily the stimuli's fault. It's our responsibility. We're having a response to things outside of us. Sometimes those responses are very necessary and rational. Sometimes those responses are not necessary and rational. Yeah, as we all know how irrational and unnecessary our emotions can be at times. Yeah, so non-violent communication, very, very good skill. I'd definitely recommend checking that out and finding some resources online for that. Another really important thing I think we can all learn to do better is choosing our timing. Sometimes we need to just choose the right time to air what we need to say, to bring up what we need to say. If my partner's already in a triggered state, if they're feeling, I don't know, if they're feeling depressed about something, maybe they've just come home from work and they've had a stressful day. Maybe, my partner's about to get her period, or she may be having her period. There's very bad times to bring certain things up. So yes, it's absolutely necessary that we get to speak and air what we need to air, but we can also choose to be a little compassionate and understanding around how certain things are going to land. If that person's ready to receive what we have to offer, great. Maybe there's a little consent that needs to be accrued in this experience. If I've got certain things that I need to bring up and I know it has the potential to bring some emotion to it, maybe I need to ask, are you okay? Are you in a place where we can have a conversation? Do you feel like you're centered and stable and able to have a conversation? Do some prep work, yeah? Do some due diligence to try and get to be sensitive to where this person's at, where your partner's at. Are they able to receive what it is you have to offer? If they're not, probably not a good idea to bring it up. You're probably not going to get the outcome that you desire, because they're going to get triggered, they're going to get emotional. The effectiveness of the communication just isn't going to be there. We want to make our communication effective. It's pointless doing it if it's just going to cause a fight and an upset. Like I said, this isn't about stuffing down what we have to say and not speaking our truth when it's needed. But it's about having some sensitivity and some maturity around how and when it's delivered. Really, really important. And I always like to remind each other to give each other a break. We're human. We're not perfect. We're going to fuck it up. We're going to get it wrong. We're going to make mistakes. The important thing is how we deal with those mistakes when they do happen. Can we recognize it? Can we take responsibility for it? Can we bring opportunities to repair? This is the really, really important thing. When we do make mistakes, when we do say things that don't go down very well or cause upset and trauma, Take some responsibility and ownership for it, and do what you can to bring connection back into the relationship. If you're feeling distant, if you're feeling like there's been some level of disruption that's occurred in the relationship, what can you do to bring back connection, to repair the damage that's been done? Even if you're not fully responsible, yeah? Of course, there's always two players in a game, and there's always, two in a conflict. Of course, we're both going to have certain levels of responsibility, but don't just sit there waiting for the other person to take responsibility. Take the higher road. Take ownership of your own part. Apologize, yeah? Show that other person by example how to be mature, how to repair, how to come back and create closeness and connection. Super, super important. Anyway, guys, all the best with this. Like I said, we're on a journey of learning and discovery here. We're gonna get it wrong. We're gonna fall off the bike. Get back on. Give it a go. It's trial and error. Everybody's different. We all have certain nuances and particularities that are going to work better for some and not for others. So work out what works for you. Some very, very simple, practical tools we can use, and we can try, and we can develop, and we can and make it work for us. Yeah, that's the important thing. Find your way, but at least give it a go. Have a crack. This is not something we should just expect to have it all sorted out. We don't. Yeah. All right, guys. I hope this has been useful for you. If you've enjoyed it, please like it. Please share it with your friends. Of course, if you haven't already, subscribe. And I'd love to get your comments. I'd love to get some interaction from you. Ask me some questions. If you've got any comments, feedback, please put them down below. All right, guys, you take care and keep loving.